Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Thomas Jefferson Unitarian Universalist Church. I'm Jim Kidwell, one of the members of the Board of Trustees. We welcome all people searching for meaning and purpose in life. We do not require an allegiance to a creed, but have agreed upon 7 principles. First of which is the inherent worth and dignity of all people. We help each other on our journey, even if it's just lending an ear. As we struggle at this time, TJ has many changes going on as well, including changing our name, searching for a new settled minister, dealing with the pandemic, and support for social issues. You are not alone. If you would like to join us, contact our membership coordinator, Janet Taylor. She can connect you with people, programs, classes, or anything for your interests. Other important people include our interim minister, Reverend Kathy Hurt, the Board of Trustees President, Deborah Nogordoff, Vice President Alan Godsave, our Justice Center Coordinator, Reverend Don Cooley, our Director of Religious Education, Barb Friedland, our Office Administrator, who is your host today, and our Zoom host today, Debbie Horvey, plus a host of volunteers that give generously of their time. In addition to Sunday service, we have morning conversation on Zoom, Monday through Thursday, 9 to 9:30, and Friday at 5 p.m. Adult classes for the fall are starting soon. Chalice circles for small groups to get together. And for more information on any of these and Zoom meeting connections, go to our website, tjuc.org. The announcements today, we have one from Dawn about the RE that's on chat. So if you look at your chat function right now, she has made an announcement. Also, the Name Change Steering Committee will be holding the first of 2 town hall brainstorming sessions this Friday, October the 2nd at 7 p.m. They're looking for a fun time as we change our new first name. Please sign up by calling the office or sending an email to newname@tjuc.org. Also, we'll be sending out a sign-up link later this week. Thank you.
We light a chalice to remind us how important it is to be together in community, to honor our heritage as Unitarian Universalists, and to shine our lights to make a difference in the world. If you have a candle or chalice handy, please light it as we read our chalice lighting words. And children and youth in your homes are warmly invited to act as chalice lighters today. We say together, here today, across the distance between us, may we listen so that we can hear. May we hear so that we can feel. May we feel so that we can know. And may we know so that we can change ourselves and this world. May this chalice we light our way.
Our opening words are adapted from W.E.B. Du Bois. Today is the acceptable time, not some more convenient season. Today we do our best work, not in some future day or year. Today we do what we must for all the tomorrows to come.
My life flows on in endless song above earth's lamentation. I hear the real, though far off hymn that hails a new creation. Through all the tumult and the strife, I hear the music It sounds an echo in my soul. How can I keep from singing? What though the tempest round me roars? I know the truth, it liveth. What though the darkness round me close? Songs in the night it giveth. No storm can shake my inmost calm, while to that rock I'm clinging. Since love prevails in heaven and earth, how can I keep from singing? When tyrants tremble as they hear the bells of freedom ringing, when friends rejoice both far and near, how can I keep from singing? To prison cell and dungeon vile, our thoughts to them are winging. When friends by shame are undefiled, how can I keep from singing?
While our church building remains closed, the work of our church and our congregation continues, which means our need for financial support continues. We thank you for your generosity, those of you who are making ongoing pledges to this church, and know that you can donate at any time through our website or by sending in a contribution to the church office. I remember sitting in a therapist's office when my son was small, lamenting my failure as a parent. I'd been quite clear in my intention not to repeat my own mother's mistakes. Unlike her, I would be patient, creative rather than punitive in my disciplining, flexible with the endless challenges that come as a child grows. Instead, I kept seeing my mother in myself, her words and tone in my voice, even some of her angry gestures. How could it be, I wailed to the therapist, that after all my resolve to be different, I was turning out to be just like her? The therapist laughed, a most untherapeutic response, I thought, then said, shaking his head, "Did you really believe that after 18 years of constant exposure to your mother day after day, all your growing up, did you really believe that you could simply think yourself into being different? Simply think away all that conditioning, that ingrained response?" When the decision came earlier this week in the Breonna Taylor case, a decision that heartbreakingly, once again, demonstrated the power of white supremacist structures and the ways in which black lives ultimately do not matter in a racist culture, I was struck to see the intensity of my surprise and disappointment. I guess I had actually thought the results might be different this time, that centuries of racist patterns might be interrupted. Yet the same question my therapist raised about my naive belief that simply wanting behavior to change would be enough is a question I ask myself and ask of those of you who'd been looking for different results in that decision. Do we actually believe that saying we want racism gone, putting up signs that say Black Lives Matter, saying ours is a church that stands for justice, saying all the right things, is enough to change our city, our society, ourselves. And when we see, again, that we have not simply thought ourselves into a new behavior, and that nothing is changing, what's our next move? The title of this sermon, The Plastic Hour, is taken from an image described by philosopher Gershom Scholem. He envisions, in his words, crucial moments when it is possible to act. If you move then, something happens. He calls these moments plastic hours because the usual order of things is softened, pliable, in motion. Scholem warns that plastic hours come rarely because they require just the right alignment of public opinion, political power, and events, usually a crisis. Even then, with the order loosened and everything moving around us, significant change will not necessarily happen. Scholem notes that these rare plastic hours can go unnoticed because we're too preoccupied with lesser things. They can also be wasted if we indulge ourselves in fretting about those lesser things, or we sit back and assume somebody else will take action. Is there any doubt that we have reached a plastic hour in our culture? Can anyone remember a time when so much has been uprooted, when so many people are speaking out, when everything seemed up for grabs? Becoming a parent did not suddenly usher me into a plastic hour. Rather, it was the combination of my own mother's shortcomings, then my young adult resolve not to repeat her mistakes, then the birth of my son, then a series of interactions over time when I saw, much to my dismay, the ways I was actually repeating my mother's mistakes, then my decision to consult a therapist to determine what was going wrong and why I was unable to hold fast to my resolve. Similarly, we did not reach this plastic hour we stand in today all at once. Not simply because of the individual who was elected president, however tempting it might be to attribute the present chaos around us to that single cause. We've been moving towards this plastic hour for a very long time, through a host of decisions, and we're finally thrust into it by a pandemic that has once and for all banished our cherished belief in unlimited individual freedom. Now, every day reminds us that we are thoroughly vulnerable. My health depends on all of you, and your health depends on me, and none of us gets the luxury of opting out. With our vulnerability now laid bare, the cruelties endured by people of color, including their greater suffering in the pandemic because of our supremacist structures that leave them with so many fewer resources, became too blatant to ignore, too clearly the responsibility of all to address, too convicting of how we participate day by day in those cruelties. So now we stand in a plastic hour. Everything around us collapsed despite the many resolutions we kept making not to have things come to this, not to let things get this bad. I sank into despair after hearing the therapist's words. 18 years of being shaped to be the mother I was turning out to be. How could I have been so naive to believe I could change myself? Was my son fated to one day find himself also in a therapist's office, lamenting all I had done wrong as his mother, enduring the same struggles I had so hoped he would be spared from? And it is tempting right now to sink into despair. We have an unrelenting barrage of distressing news coming at us, whether in the form of ever more cases of COVID-19, ever more heartless decisions by people in power, ever more pain in the streets of our city. Facing all that, understanding that the suffering all around us and including us has built up over a very, very long time, that we've been well schooled to act in ways that keep the suffering intact and maintain the structures that keep racism intact. What can we possibly do to change anything? After an interminable moment, the therapist asked me what seemed an irrelevant question. How do you take down a dam? If you had the job of removing a dam from across a river, how would you accomplish that? I responded that I supposed I would get dynamite or some other explosive, set charges across the dam, and blow it up. The therapist nodded, agreeing that such a tactic would work, but he noted it would also leave a huge mess to clean up and might even risk damaging something other than the dam. I shrugged, feeling as if, again, I was confronting a hopeless situation. Then the therapist said, "There are other ways to take down a dam. You could just poke a couple of holes in the dam, strategically placed holes, and then step back. Those holes, combined with the pressure of the water already built up around the dam, would be enough to bring the dam down." Poking holes, then letting the forces, the energy already present in a situation do the rest of the work. That image has stayed with me over time, returning whenever I find myself facing some overwhelming task, whether it be changing my parenting, leading a congregation through an interim time, engaging in the work for justice. We are always standing at the edge of some impossible challenge. Explosives are rarely available. If they are, we run the risk of creating great damage when we use them. But we can always poke a hole or two and trust the mysterious energy present all around us to take those small holes and work the transformation that is needed. Today, our community is crying for us to do something. We can look for somebody else to act. We can say, well, I already did my part. It's time for someone else to step up. We can indulge in righteous indignation or the inertia of despair and tell ourselves that such responses are enough since they prove that we do care. There is no shortage of ways to avoid taking action in this plastic hour and thereby letting it slide past, not to return in this lifetime. Or we can take one step forward, poke a hole, encourage others to do the same, keep poking holes in that terrible dam that has been in place far too long and supported too much suffering. And then see the powerful arc of the universe that is already bending towards justice, finally bend to take the dam down and allow the healing waters to come. And now our Justice Center coordinator, the Reverend Dawn Cooley, will lead us through a prayer for our community.
Hi, everyone. It's good to be with you this morning, almost this afternoon. My prayer is not so much of a prayer in a typical sense today, as much as it is a way of bringing you along with me. I am exhausted. And if you don't know already, I'm a crier anyway. So I want you to know I'm okay. I'm just tired. I've been up for 24 hours. Most of that time has been downtown. And it's really hard. It is really, really hard. On Tuesday, the clergy were called downtown because we thought we would get the grand jury results in the Breonna Taylor case. And after waiting hours and hours in the Injustice Square at the corner of 6th and Jefferson, we learned that they wouldn't be announced that day on Tuesday. I wasn't able to be in the square on Wednesday, but I watched via social media as the results were read, and people keened their grief. Wednesday evening, there was a rally scheduled that many of our legislators were speaking at. And before the rally could even get started, it was disrupted by police. The marchers went to First Unitarian Church because Lisa Wilner is a member of First Unitarian and one of our state representatives who was planning on speaking. And so they opened the church and we had a rally there. This is something that was suggested by the mayor. The mayor suggested that we open our churches to give people a place to grieve and to lament. The experience was so powerful that First Unitarian decided that they would be open through the remainder of the curfew, which was at that point scheduled only through Friday night. And so Thursday night, all the protesters knew that First U was the place to go to. We organized clergy to be there. There was jail support, medics, food. It was amazing. Except that on their way, Representative Attica Scott and activist Shamika Parrish Wright, walking to the church peacefully, were arrested. They were arrested and charged with throwing a flare into the library and breaking the library window, something that neither of them would ever do. The police used the excuse of the flare to trap the protesters in the church for more than 2 hours. They kept telling us that if we just did this, they would leave. And so we would do that. Well, if you just do this, we'll leave. And then we would do that. Well, if you would just do this, then leave. And they kept moving the target. Finally, people were able to go. But on Friday, we had a repeat of that in many ways. At one point, the police arrived and They didn't even have a commanding officer on site. They were standing on one side and protesters on the church grounds on the other side. And they were basically in a standoff. The police said they had been called there because of reports of an armed militia. And they were ready to fire their guns. It was extremely scary, probably one of the scariest moments in my life in retrospect. But one of the other clergy members and I went to talk to the police and ask them what was going on. There wasn't, and there was, an armed militia there. There were people open carrying on the church grounds. That happens. Because when you can't call the police, then you provide your own security. And there are many leftists and very progressive people who now carry guns. We were able to talk the police and the protesters down on Friday evening, thankfully. But then again, just last night, we had issues. The protesters ended up being trapped inside the church for over 3 hours. The police were threatening to storm the church. There were children in the church. There were older people with mobility issues in the church. All of this as an excuse to terrorize people of color. I am not blaming one particular police officer. It's not one, it's the system. But last night, it was scary. It's scary to have 300 people trapped in a sanctuary, not knowing if they're going to be able to leave. And once again, the police kept moving the target. If you do this, you'll be able to leave. If you'll do this, you'll be able to leave. And they were so exquisitely, it was so exquisite at just saying, manipulating language in a way that you had to pay a lot of attention to. Well, you should be safe if you leave in XYZ fashion. What do you mean should be safe? We're trying to guarantee that these people will be safe. It is in your power to make sure that they are safe, that they can walk to their cars and go home. When we finally negotiated a solution with the police, people were very happy to leave last night at sometime between 3 o'clock in the morning and 4 o'clock, I think. I'm not exactly certain, it all fuzzes together right now. And we felt really good that we were able to negotiate and work through a compromise. Until we learned that there were at least 4 checkpoints set up throughout the city around downtown that captured and arrested over 16 people, somewhere between 16 and 50. They did illegal searches of vehicles. We have Facebook streaming video of them grabbing a woman's purse and opening it up. It's not okay. Yes, last night there was some property destruction. You'll probably read about that. This was particularly from young people who felt no hope, who feel ignored, who are constantly dehumanized by a system and not given any options. Yes, there are people who are armed. As I said, if you can't call the police because you don't trust them, then you create your own security. The militia folks and the open carry folks that I have met do not take their duties lightly. When we thought that the cops were going to storm the church, they all relinquished their weapons and we locked them all up in a room so that there would be absolutely no doubt that we were peaceful. But I beg you, don't let these things distract you. The system of policing in our country is corrupt. And LMPD has lost the trust of the community, and they are not being held accountable to even the legal system. We live in a militarized city where police can ignore civil rights, randomly declare unlawful assembly whenever they feel like it. A city where they can use the curfew to impose even more severe charges on anyone they want to. And I don't know for sure, but I'm guessing none of you have seen anybody picked up for curfew violations in your neighborhoods. I know my neighbors are out all times of the night walking their dogs, going to restaurants even. Friends, I am so weary, and this is just after 4 or 5 days. I know you hear it in my voice. Imagine living under this sort of oppression and tyranny every day. What that must be like. So, my prayer is that you get involved if you're not already. I've seen a lot of TJ people downtown that First U signing up. In fact, last night, Tony Sweezy and Martha Flack were lucky enough to be trapped in all of this with us. So you can even ask their own accounts of this. And the night before, we had a whole crew of TJ women who were circulating and getting to know people. If you feel like it, I'm going to invite you to sign up at the Sign Up Genius that I am putting in the chat right now. First U has declared that they will be a sanctuary church for the protesters at least through tonight, so tomorrow morning. But it may go longer. We don't know. If you do sign up though, prepare to spend the night and prepare to be challenged and prepare to be uncomfortable and prepare to love and grow in new ways. I also invite you, even if you can't show up downtown, and I know some of you can't, call the mayor, call the chief of police, call them every day. Let them know this is not okay. Call your Metro Council person. Let them know this is not okay. Donate money to the cause. There are so many ways that you can do that. You can also donate your time, even just donating food or schlepping things around for people. I'm also going to invite you to change your media consumption if your primary source of information is mainstream media. Because one of the things that I've seen is that the mainstream media is reporting the stories of conflict more than the stories of community building. And even I just did it today with you, and I apologize. It has been amazing to watch the community at First Unitarian develop through this. People step up and clean up the space on their own. People do what is needed. People play music. There is love and there is support, and it is just unbelievably amazing. Louisville is lucky to have a bunch of folks who on social media are called live streamers. And what that means is that they are recording live and you can watch things happen live. And that gives you a much better sense of what is going on because it's not edited to produce a particular picture. And so if you are on Facebook in particular, we have some wonderful live streamers that you can check out. And then the last thing I'm going to ask is that you educate and pay attention to your own patterns. One of the things that I hear white people say a lot is that we support the cause, but we don't support the methods. And I'd like to challenge you to hear the difference between that and what the Kenosha, Wisconsin church said when Kenosha was burned. The church said, we would rather our church burn 100 times than lose another person to police violence. Do you hear the difference? So listen to yourself and listen to how what you're saying is coming across. Is there a but in it? Is there something that contradicts the support that you're offering, the empathy that you're offering? We are inextricably connected. My future and your future and the future of the protesters. We know this as Unitarian Universalists. We know that everyone deserves to be treated with love and respect. This is my prayer for our city. This is my prayer for all of us. Amen.
Do you hear, oh my friend, in the place where you stand, through the sky, through the land? Do you hear, in the heights on the plain, in the vale on the main, in the sun, in the rain? Do you hear, through the roar, through the rush, through the throng, through the crush, do you hear in the hush of your soul, hear the cry fear won't still, hear the heart's call to will, hear a sigh startling trill, in your soul, in your soul. From the place where you stand to the outermost strand, do you hear, oh my friend? Do you hear all the dreams, all the dares, all the sighs, all the prayers? They are yours, mine, and theirs. Do you hear? Do you hear?
Today begins Yom Kippur, the holiest time in the Jewish tradition, a time for reflection on the year just finishing, and particularly for reflection on the ways in which one has failed to uphold the values one subscribes to, failed to show compassion for those least among us, failed to be patient with one's loved ones. In the spirit of Yom Kippur, we have this morning a closing ritual adapted from Unitarian Universalist minister Rob Eller Isaacs. For remaining silent when a single voice would have made a difference,
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
For each time that our fears make us rigid and inaccessible,
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
For each time we struck out in anger without just cause,
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
for each time our greed blinded us to the needs of others,
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
for the selfishness that sets us apart and alone,
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
for actions that allowed us to believe the illusion of separateness,
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
for our willingness to rest contentedly in a position of white supremacy while people of color all around us are suffering.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
for our choice not to change, because change was hard and meant sacrifice.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
And now take a moment to recall your own personal times of failure, meanness, indifference. For all those times we have not been our best self.
We forgive ourselves and each other.